Good morning, everyone, and thanks for listening. So, this article just came up in the Yahoo. It's written by a Christina Gregg on AOL.com, and its title says it all. Melania Trump entered the U.S. with Einstein visa designated for people with extraordinary abilities. And I'll just be honest with you, I feel like that's going back to the bell curve, and that's going back to classifying certain individuals as being more superior and, more gifted, more talented. Basically, people who, such as her, if you wanted to look at it, you have extraordinary white abilities, which again, it proves and disproves the denials that certain individuals have always been stating, that there's no such thing as white privilege, which there is. There's certain select groups of people that are picked or handpicked to be in this country. And there's people that are picked for specific reasons. And so you see the title, and it goes on to state that Melania Trump that already. So Melania Trump entered the US in 2001 after receiving a green card visa designated for people with extraordinary abilities, according to the new Washington Post report. The wife of the president, Donald Trump, was the only five people from the Slovenia nation, or the Slovenia country, who entered the US in March of 2001 under that EB1 program, which is Extraordinary Abilities, which has been described as the Einstein visa. So this detail surrounding the First Lady's immigration journey comes after Melania's own parents recently faced criticism for potentially relying on an immigration process referred to by some of what is called the chain migration that their son-in-law wants to end. And so in the 90s, in the earlier 2000s, then Melania Nas, before she was known as, now we call her Melania Trump, could be seen gracing the runway shows in Europe, billboard cigarette ads, and pages on Sports Illustrated swimsuit editions. The EB1 program, which was written into the U.S. immigration policy via the Immigration Act of 1990, was built to let in researchers, business executives, and others who demonstrated and had the sustained national and international acclaim. So you have to have these Einstein abilities, these great EB abilities, extraordinary abilities. According to the Post, over 1 million green cards were granted in 2001 alone, and only 3,376 were issued to people who are on immigration status with an extraordinary ability, the selected group. So that's why in Donald Trump's campaign, you hear him talking about, I'm sure they'll let in, you know, they were going to let in some of their best, but they didn't let it. Then you can't be here. Ms. Trump was more than amply qualified an attorney for Melania Trump, and her family said to the Post, there is no reason to adjudicate her petition publicly when her privacy is so important to her. Okay, so she doesn't want anybody to know that she's an immigrant and that she came here on special circumstances. What's her special circumstance? White privilege and her EB1 program, Einstein visa, special, extraordinary abilities. After ordering the end of the DACA program, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals policy, which will effectively cease and has it ceased March or will cease on March 5th. I say it ceased. President Trump has tweeted many times about immigration as he on Capitol Hill lawmakers attempt to find middle ground on issues surrounding national security, border wall protection, and the status of an estimated 3 million dreamers who were brought to the U.S. undocumented as children. And so that's basically the full run of the article. And so this article was initially published on AOL.com. And so it's entitled Melania Trump Entered the U.S. with Einstein Visa Designated for People with the EB-1 program, which is quoted extraordinary ability program. And, you know, I'm just going to give you a little bit of my opinion. I feel like the reason why a lot of this has happened is, I feel like that the US government played a part in putting different races of people against one another. And they sort of pitted African Americans and Latinos against one another in the beginning because they didn't really, people who were of Latino descent or whatever, didn't really have a history on how the treatment of Blacks. And they maybe had a small history. Some might have known and others probably didn't read up on it before they came. And so there was already a problem that it existed or pre-existed way before a lot of the people that you see that are coming here saying that they're dreamers. Martin Luther King had a dream. There's a lot of dreams that other people who have been forced here and forced to work, their ancestors were forced to work, had dreams, and a lot of those dreams are deferred. And so it's sad, and I feel like a lot of this has been orchestrated under the guise of people who are behind the scenes. And so a lot of this is to fuel the economy, and then basically they use people and then they use you up. And when they don't need you anymore, or you're a drain on the system somehow, or they tend to blame the poor, they blame the people they feel are the most vulnerable, then what happens is those people are pretty much targeted. And so it's just like the same thing when you look at the history of fascism, how a group of people, if they're under, they're over policed or under the guise of these laws, they're pretty much the targeted groups. And so you have Blacks, you have Latinos that seem to, get targeted a lot by law enforcement, mass incarceration, the housing market, where they're steering people in certain neighborhoods. You're not able to qualify for particular groups. You have women who are sometimes targeted, and they feel as though they don't have a voice to speak. So they wait, and they're afraid to report things because they feel like automatically the law will work against them because it's more patriarchy that's involved. And that if you say something, well, what were you wearing? What did you say to him? How did you look? Did you give him your phone number? Who did you really like him? Well, that's a guy thing that happens, stuff like that. Or you have old people, because they're, frail and they're weak, and people steal their money and take their checks, their Social Security checks, steal out of their mailboxes or steal from their accounts. You have people within their family who prey upon their own elderly. And you have people on the street, if they see elderly people who they can't really do much or can't see well, they get attacked or mugged. And you have people that are on social media sites, and you have certain people who are allowed to show and flash guns and threaten other individuals. And they happen to be, I guess, some of those people with those EB abilities, extraordinary abilities, white privilege. So they don't get dinged and they don't get demonetized and stripped of their channels like maybe other people do. I guess those people, those black people who don't have those EB abilities, why you have a lot of these things that go on, and then you have people telling people who haven't really had a history, their background, or minority people against other minorities. And so that's where you have a lot of that clashing, because one thinks he's got a leg up on the other. They both essentially come from out of an impoverished situation. Both are fighting a system that works to do harm against them. And so what they do is they meet people like this who don't really have any regard for those individuals and pretty much take advantage of you. They use you to the best of whatever abilities that you do have. And then they take advantage of you to where now, if they can't use you anymore, they want you to leave. And so I believe that's where a lot of this is coming from, honestly. And so I feel like they fear that if Black or African American people and Latino people were, or Mexican people were to get together, it would be a force to be reckoned with, and they don't want that. And so they've worked hard to discredit and discriminate people of color, and they've worked hard to put people against one another and orchestrate all the fighting and all of the things that we see thus far. So I also noticed that you have people who are very insensitive about, what people have gone through, and they feel like that, they've earned everything that they've received. A lot of it is marrying up. They married into money, or they've slept with people for money. And, I'm showing you this article here. You'll probably see it in the Yahoo, and it may be in other articles as well. But anyway, I just wanted to know what was your comments and thoughts on that whole issue. I know some people look up to people like this, but you gotta wonder, why is it that one person is able to get away with so much, and others are not able to get away with not even anything, very little, if any. And so I believe everybody that really has a mindset to do better and advance in their life and their career and for their families would want to use their talents and abilities, no matter what nationality or race or color you are. But to see things like this further much disproves those individuals who are out there on YouTube, and they're Black, and I won't even name the names, who want to kiss the bottoms of these racist white people and say, there's no white privilege. But honey, there's EB abilities. And so there's a select group that have EB abilities. And so if you don't fit under that criterion, then you are going to get kicked out, or you're not going to be even given the opportunity to come into the country because you don't have that select ability. And so what was Melania Trump's select ability? Her body, her looks, walking the runway. It doesn't sound like it's a business person or somebody that's going to work under the guise of law, and somebody that has been through a lot of college and worked hard and pulled up their bootstraps, and they're working and they're slaving and they're trying to make it, and they've got these EB abilities. Now, her abilities is using her body, basically, is what it sounded like. The article pretty much pointed it out there, putting her face on billboard ads and cigarette ads and things like that. So I guess it takes EB abilities to do that, right? Is that what you're saying? So if that's the case, a bunch of people should be able to come over here. So anyway, I feel like that this whole thing has been orchestrated. I feel like that a lot of illegal things have happened thus far in the past and still to this day. And I don't believe that people are telling the truth. Even in government, there's a lot of lying. There's a lot of stealing, there's a lot of cheating, and there's a lot of collusion, and there's a lot of meddling. And it may not be with everyone. It might be with a select group, or it might be with a number of people. And they sort of hand over hand favor. There's favoritism that goes on. And we know even with these little jobs, in local areas, people show favoritism to select groups of individuals. They have cliques. And so I scratch your back, you scratch my back. If you don't tell what we're not supposed to do, I won't tell what you're doing that you're not supposed to do. And everything will be all great because we happen to have these EB abilities, Einstein abilities. So it's just a sad situation when you see these things like this. It just points out more of the conspiracy that is not really a fallacy. It's really a lot of truth to the light of what's going on. And so you have a gut feeling that something's corrupt. If it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, then it is a duck. So, well, what do you think about this EB abilities and targeting people and law enforcement over policing certain communities and certain people that are marginalized and they're pretty much bumped out of the American dream?